What do we do? Move on to America? Let's move on to America, shall we? Shall we move on to the corrupt, speaking of POSs, we'll go from POSs of Canada to POSs of America. And there is no other POS of more epic biblical proportions than Judge Boasberg. What's his first name? Here are 4 things to know about Judge Boasberg. Judge James Jeb Boasberg. This is the judge that is preventing Trump from doing what he was elected to do in terms of blocking or attempting to block and then attempting to order the diversion, turning around of a plane, which, if you believe the Trump administration, is carrying illegal immigrants who are also members of the Tren de Aragua, TDA, Venezuelan criminal international, what do they call it, transnational terrorist organization. This judge, who is an activist, corrupt piece of judge, tried to get Trump to turn the 2 planes full of illegal and arguably, but not so arguably, criminal designated terrorist organization, Tren de Aragua gang members back to America. Okay. Then when the plane was in international waters and Stephen Miller explained quite clearly why they were not abiding by the order because it didn't apply jurisdictionally, he's back at it. And if you didn't know what he was back at, here it is right here. The article link, because I prefer to use the archive just in case they change it. This was archived a few hours ago. This is Judge Boasberg telling Donald Trump that Nazis got better treatment than the criminal TDA gang members that Trump is trying to deport to put in a El Salvadorian prison. Why? Because Venezuela won't take him back. Now, I want to highlight the absolute insanity, which many of you might be familiar with, and many of you might not. He's right. The Nazis did get better treatment. Why? I dare say even the American government, along with the British intelligence, even tried to smuggle some of those Nazis out of Germany, smuggle some of those Nazis into America because they wanted some of that sweet, sweet Nazi science that those Nazis had in their Nazi brains. So he's probably right. Nazis did get better treatment, but only because of government corruption and not because the treatment that they deserved was somehow unwarranted. Yeah, Nazis might have gotten better treatment, does not mean that TDA gang members, illegal aliens, do not deserve to get deported. Now, with that said, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Operation Paperclip, look it up. You all know Nazis got better treatment. Yada, yada, yada. Okay. United States treated alleged Nazis better during World War II than the Trump administration treated Venezuelan migrants. You see, they're still calling them migrants. And I'm old enough now to have lived through illegal alien. I think they went from illegal alien to aliens. Then they went to undocumented aliens or undocumented illegal. It was something like a mix of the two. Then they went to migrants. Then they went to undocumented migrants. And whatever the order, you know what I'm getting at. They went through the full Orwellian dictionary of diluting the term to now Venezuelan migrants when they are actually referring to illegal criminal aliens that are also members of the most violent gang designated terrorist organization. But you call them Venezuelan migrants and then it's terrible. You can't deport them because all they have to do is come here and cry asylum after they've illegally crossed into a country. All right, so the treated Nazis better. Federal judge told him. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit is hearing arguments over the Trump administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act last week to deport more than 200 alleged members of a Venezuelan gang to El Salvador with no due process. Well, it's interesting here. And this is my question I asked Barnes. Wouldn't the more pressing concern be to verify, maybe even just ask what the due process is that they went through? They're not just plucking people off the streets in the Trump administration. If you believe they are, you're an idiot. So they're not just plucking people off the streets. Presumably there's some sort of internal process that they're going through to verify the illegal alien status of the illegal alien, the affiliation to criminal gangs. I don't think TDA has a roster, a registry. Maybe they do. Or maybe you just go by the tattoos on the bodies of these illegal criminal aliens that they've arrested. No due process presupposes a conclusion. What was the due process that the administration is using to designate, identify, and administer the deportation of these illegal criminal aliens? Plane loads of people. There was no procedures in place to notify people. Judge Patricia Millett said. No, it was not Boasberg that said this. It was another. Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemies Act. Judge Millett noted that alleged Nazis were given hearing boards and were subject to established regulations, while the alleged members of the Tren gave no such rights. Maybe, just thinking like a bit of a conspiracy theorist here, that the reason why certain Nazis were given hearing boards and were subject to established regulations, maybe it's because The CIA wanted to vet which Nazis they wanted to actually smuggle. I don't know. Maybe. There's no regulations and nothing was adopted by the agency officials that were administering this. They weren't given notice. They weren't told where they were going. They were given those people on those planes on that Sunday. They were given those people on those planes on that Sunday and had no opportunity to file habeas or any type of action to challenge the removal under the AEA. Judge Millett said, "What's factually wrong about what I said?" Okay, let's go through this. I want to hear what the response is. "Well, Your Honor, we certainly dispute the Nazi analogy." Okay, fine. Who said that? Said Deputy Assistant Attorney General Drew Ensign. Ensign compared an order from the U.S. District Judge James Boasberg temporarily blocking the deportations to a judge directing a carrier group from the South China Sea to the Persian Gulf, an analogy that drew an immediate rebuke from Millett. Who else? This is how I'm fairly certain that the administration is watching Viva and Barnes' Law for the People Sunday Night Law Extravaganza, because they're using analogies that we use there. Hang on, Millett said, asserting that the power to do this is not ordering ships to relocate in foreign waters, right? That is straight up judicial process that's allowed by the Supreme Court and the circuit president. Judge Millett and Ensign appear to agree on one thing. The president's actions have brought the court into unprecedented territory. I think the intrusion upon the war powers and foreign policy powers of the president is utterly unprecedented, Ensign argued. Well, this is unprecedented. Oh, so of course there's no precedent for it because no president has ever used this statute this way, which isn't to say one way or the other it can't be done, but simply to say we are in unprecedented territory. Well, that's where the Supreme Court's going to have to get involved, people. The hearing comes after Judge Boasberg ruled that the migrants deserve to have a court hearing before their deportations to determine whether or not they belonged to Tren de Aragua. Can you imagine this? But Barnes mentioned it yesterday, and when you understand it this way, they want to have individual hearings for every illegal alien to determine whether or not they have ties to Tren de Aragua gang. Every single deportation in America under Trump's use of the Enemies Act is going to be subject to oversight by a judge who's going to, they're going to have like a full trial to determine the affiliation to Tren de Aragua. How do you even establish that? In a ruling denying the Trump administration's request to dissolve his order blocking the deportation, Judge Boasberg wrote that Trump's unprecedented use of the Alien Enemies Act does not remove the government's responsibility to ensure the men removed could contest their designation as alleged gang members. Well, they could probably do it. Maybe from if they were brought back to Venezuela, in the country from which they illegally migrated one way or the other, regardless of whatever else you think about them. And we know this, he invoked the Enemies Act, a wartime authority used to deport non-citizens with little to no due process, by arguing that the Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua, is a hybrid criminal state that is invading the U.S. Invading, it could be, what was the word? Predatory incursion as well. Boasberg temporarily blocked the president's use to deport more than 200 alleged gang members to El Salvador, calling the removals awfully frightening and incredibly troublesome. They should ship those 200 straight to Boasberg's house. See who finds that awfully frightening and incredibly troublesome. An official with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency acknowledged in a sworn declaration that many of the non-citizens deported last week did not have criminal records in the United States. This is when you see the time when the media accidentally tells you the truth. And it's much worse than you think. Oh, they don't have criminal records in the United States of America. Pray tell then where they have criminal records. Might it be Venezuela, the country from which they illegally migrated at the behest of, with the blessing of, and under the direction of the government? No, they didn't rape and murder anybody in America yet. So you can't deport them because they don't have any criminal records in the United States. How do you get the criminal records, by the way, when people cross illegally from countries that may or may not keep accurate records of criminality? Holy hell. The court need not resolve the thorny question of whether the judiciary has the authority to assess this claim in the first place. That is because the plaintiffs are likely to succeed on another equally fundamental theory. Before they may be deported, they are entitled to individualized hearings to determine whether the act applies to them at all, Judge Boasberg wrote in the ruling. Individual rulings by activist corrupt judges, do not forget who Judge Boasberg is. Boasberg acknowledged the use of the Alien Enemies Act implicates a host of complicated legal issues, sidestepped the larger question of whether the law was properly invoked, instead focusing on the due process. Oh, he sidestepped the whether or not this is a justiciable question for the judge to even stick his big corrupt face into. Yeah, I'm gonna bypass the justiciability of this very invocation and just presume due process to illegal aliens who are by the Trump administration saying members of a criminal transnational gang terrorist organization. Federal courts are equipped to adjudicate that question. when individuals threatened with detention and removal challenge their designation as such because the named plaintiffs dispute that they are members of Tren de Agua, they may not be deported until a court has been able to decide the merits of their challenge, he wrote. Holy crab apples. We'll just skip to the end. Trump is asking the appeals court to overturn Boasberg's temporary restraining order. It doesn't sound like they're going to do it, which is why the Supreme Court's going to have to get involved. The government's not being terribly cooperative at this point, but I will get to the bottom of whether they violated my order and who ordered this and what the consequences, whatever Boasberg said on Friday. That was after they didn't turn their planes around after Boasberg's order. Turn those planes around. Bring them back. Drop them off at the front door of Boasberg. With the order temporarily blocked, Trump administration has vowed to use other authorities to deport non-citizens. Over the weekend, Venezuelan National Assembly President Jorge Rodriguez announced that the country had reached an agreement to resume repatriation flights of Venezuelan migrants. You think Boasberg is going to ban those too? Can't send them back to their country of origin because they claimed asylum. They don't want to go back. We're going to keep targeting the worst of the worst, which we've been doing since day one, and deporting them through various laws, whatever. 3-person panel hearing today's arguments includes 2 judges nominated by Republican presidents, including one nominated by Trump himself. The D.C. Circuit is the last stop before the Trump administration could take the case to the Supreme Court, where Trump nominated 3 of the judges during his last term, solidifying the court's conservative majority. Operation Paper Clippy coming from Pasha Moyer. Hold on, I got to show you this. This is fantastic. Over on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. This is classic. It looks like you are trying to smuggle Nazi scientists into the country. Would you like me to turn on caps and disable spell check? That's very funny.